Picture this. You're sitting here right now, watching this video. And you have no idea that you almost couldn't be watching it at all. Because over 40 years ago, in a single night, one single person decided not to blow up the world. Not because he was trying to be a hero. Not because someone told him to. But because he had a weird feeling in his gut. This is the story of Stanislav Petrov. And I'm willing to bet you've never heard of him. It's 1983. I know that sounds like the setup to a boring history lesson, but stay with me for a second, because this part matters. The world was split into two sides. On one side, the United States and their allies. On the other, the Soviet Union, basically Russia, and their allies. And these two sides did not like each other. At all. They called it the Cold War, not because no one was fighting, but because both sides had so many nuclear weapons that an actual war would have meant the end of humanity. Think about it like this. Both sides had thousands of missiles. Each one powerful enough to wipe an entire city off the map. One missile. One city. Gone. And the rule was simple. If the other side launches, you launch back. No time to think. No second chances. And in 1983 specifically, things were extra tense. A few weeks earlier, Soviet military forces had shot down a civilian passenger plane. 269 people died. U.S. President Ronald Reagan publicly called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Long story short, both sides were nervous, suspicious, and ready. And that's where Stanislav Petrov comes in. Petrov wasn't a general. He wasn't some movie hero. He was a lieutenant colonel, middle management basically. A regular guy doing his job. On the night of September 26, 1983, he was on duty at a secret facility called Serpukhov 15. A bunker complex outside of Moscow. His job monitored the early warning system. That system had satellites in space designed to detect missile launches from American soil. If someone over there pressed a button, Petrov was supposed to be the first to know. So he's sitting there. Normal shift. Long evening, nothing unusual. Until just after midnight, when the alarm goes off. The alarm is deafeningly loud. A message flashes on the screen. One missile. Launched from the United States. Headed for the Soviet Union. Petrov stares at the screen. The protocol is clear, reported immediately. Up the chain. To the generals. They decide whether to fire back. But Petrov hesitates. And then, before he can even pick up the phone, another message appears. 2 missiles. Then 3. 4. 5 missiles. All launched from the United States. All heading toward the Soviet Union. The room is spinning. Sirens are screaming. Everyone is looking at Petrov. And Petrov just sits there. And thinks. What's going through his head? He thinks, if the US is launching a real attack, why only 5 missiles? They have thousands. A real attack would be hundreds of missiles at once. Not 5. On top of that, the system is brand new. Just installed. Bugs are possible. Bugs are actually pretty likely. But he also knows, if he's wrong, if this is a real attack, then the Soviet Union has no time left to respond. He has a few minutes. Maybe. Petrov picks up the phone. Reports to his superiors. False alarm. He was right. It was a false alarm. The system had mistaken sunlight reflecting off clouds for a missile launch. A software glitch. A reflection. That's it. 5 missiles. 0 real. And Stanislav Petrov had just stopped the Soviet Union from firing back at missiles that didn't exist. Now you're probably thinking, okay, this guy saved the world, He must have gotten a medal, a parade, a statue somewhere. Nope. Petrov wasn't punished. But he wasn't rewarded either. He was transferred. Quietly sidelined. Eventually pushed into retirement. Why? Because he'd broken protocol. Because he hadn't reported immediately. Because his decision, even though it was right, had exposed flaws in the system. And nobody wanted to admit that publicly. For years, almost no one knew what had happened that night. The incident was classified. Top secret. It wasn't until the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, that the files came to light. And the world found out for the first time about that night. I want to sit with this question for a second, because I think it's worth actually imagining. If Petrov had followed protocol that night, if he'd reported it immediately up the chain, the generals would have had minutes to decide whether to fire back. And the chances they would have? Very high. That's literally what the system was built for. A Soviet counterstrike would have meant nuclear bombs hitting American cities. The US would have fired back. And then... We're not talking about the end of a few cities anymore. We're talking about nuclear winter. Hundreds of millions dead. The end of the world as we know it. All of it stopped by a gut feeling from a man almost nobody knows today. Stanislav Petrov died in 2017. Alone in his apartment outside Moscow. He was 77 years old. In his final years, he gave a few interviews. And whenever someone asked him if he was a hero, he always said the same thing. I was just doing my job. I find that kind of mind-blowing. That the world so often comes down to what one single person decides in one single moment. And that person just gets forgotten. Maybe there are more moments like this. Decisions that changed everything, made by people whose names we'll never know. What do you think? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, you can leave a like and subscribe to support me and my work.